So you want to play a build that's something akin to Legolas in Baldur's Gate 3? Well, the Assassin Gloom Stalker might be the choice for you. You move around one-shotting mobs with deadly range attacks from a distance. This build can also make use of sneak attack for some increased damage and additional attacks when combat begins, making it a very potent offensive character. It's also capable of using any ranged weapon for impressive results, giving it some flexibility as you progress through the game, and making it friendly with party members of any class, rather than directly competing with them for gear. This video will take you through all the steps towards making your deadly archer, and there's a lot of room for customization if you prefer different choices like dual-wielding hand crossbows or using the thief subclass if you'd rather, and those are two popular alternatives. Regardless of which route you go, this type of build is strong and makes for an incredibly simple mindset. Stealth around, shoot things, and, well, profit. At level 1, we'll select the Ranger class, and this will allow us to pick a favored enemy. Personally, I find Bounty Hunter to be the most useful, but overall, none of these make a tremendous difference in your playthrough. By all means, select whichever one that you prefer. On top of that, we'll get a Natural Explorer. Now, depending on what else you have in your party and what you plan to bring, Urban Tracker is an excellent choice if you do not have Sleight of Hand covered. If you do have Sleight of Hand covered, I find Wasteland Wanderer Fire to be the next most useful. And after that, I find Cold to be the next most useful. So keep that in mind, and again, this will vary depending on what else is in your party. For ability scores, Dexterity to 17, and the logic behind this is because with the Hair of the Hag, we can bump this to 18. We can use the Ability Improvement feat at level 4 to push that to 20, and the Mirror of Loss to push it to 22. If this is not going to be a character that you use Hair of the Hag, you can leave the Dexterity at 16, put that extra point into Wisdom, or alternatively, if you don't acquire the Hair of the Hag, say you fail the DC check, or however you're managing your own playthrough, you have the option to use an ability improvement to bump the Dexterity and the Wisdom up to even numbers. After that, we put Constitution to 16. This will help with some saving throws, retain concentration, and we will be selecting some spells that require concentration to complement this build as we continue to level. Other than that, everything else you can leave pretty neutral. For skill proficiencies, you want to make sure that you have Stealth. After that, it's entirely up to you. Again, I find things like Nature and Survival nice just because I don't have them covered with my particular party in this run. So you don't have a ton of options here, so some things are kind of limited. Taking Athletics isn't going to do anything for you since your acrobatic skill is already going to be higher. At level 2, we'll get to select a pair of spells as well as a fighting style. For the spells, we're going to pick up Ensnaring Strike. This is honestly just what I find to be the best of the remaining spells. Cure Wounds isn't that great. There are other methods of healing. If this was Healing Ward, I would actually take it. However, Cure Wounds has to be in melee range, which really dramatically changes my opinion of the spell. Additionally, we'll take Hunter's Mark. This will allow you to do an additional 1d6 damage, and you can transfer it from one target to another after that first target dies. So very useful and adds a tremendous amount of damage throughout the course of combat. For fighting styles, you have a couple of options here, and what I mean by options is you could choose between archery or two-weapon fighting. Archery is very nice if you're using a short bow, long bow, crossbow, heavy crossbow, and even hand crossbows. However, if you do plan on using hand crossbows primarily, then I would recommend two-weapon fighting. When you make an attack with your offhand weapon, you can add your ability modifier to the damage of the attack. This build will absolutely work with any ranged weapon that you like, so cater your build to what you plan on using, or utilize 100 gold to respec if you change your weapon set. I'll be, for the sake of this guide, demonstrating a longbow version, so we're going to select archery here. Level 3, we'll pick up a spell as well as the subclass option. For the subclass option, we're going to go with the Gloom Stalker, and what this is going to do for us is allow us to get subclass features and actions. The subclass features, plus 3 bonus to initiative, absolutely huge, especially with the amount of damage we can deal in the opening turn. We're also getting increased movement speed by 3 meters in that first turn, and most importantly, you can make an attack that deals an additional 1d8 damage. It doesn't just deal 1d8 damage, it is an additional attack that has that bonus damage added. So you actually get an extra attack on the opening round of combat. Superior Dark Vision solves all the issues you might have with chances to hit, and essentially at this point this character has an incredibly high chance to hit even at a low level of 3. We'll gain Dread Ambusher Hide, can hide from enemies as a bonus action. Umbral Shroud allows you as an action to go invisible for 10 turns, and you will make use of this as well because then you can reopen. For spells, I like to pick up Long Strider. This works as a ritual outside of combat. You can cast it on all the members of your party and give them all 3 meters additional bonus movement speed. If you have that covered, again, you don't need multiple characters with that. So if you have somebody else providing it, just pick something else. I would argue that Hail of Thorns is probably the next best. Targets will still take half damage if they save. Makes it a somewhat reliable AoE, although the damage in comparison to your single target attack is very minimal. Level 4 will gain access to that first feat, and like I said, we'll take ability improvement, pushing your dexterity up to 19. With the Hair of the Hag, this number will be 20. Level 5 will gain an extra attack, meaning that we can now attack twice with that ranged weapon. On top of that, we get access to a spell. I personally like to pick up Spike Growth at this point, and this is a concentration spell, like we mentioned before. This will have the movement of creatures within inside of it, and they also take 2 to 8 damage. Very useful. This allows you to get more attacks off before they reach you, or just attack, reposition, and then on the following turn, attack, reposition, rinse, repeat basically, and deal damage over and over. You also gain access to Misty Step, which is incredibly useful. This allows you to just teleport yourself without taking opportunity attacks, get to high ground, put yourself in a favorable spot, and basically never miss. At level 6, I recommend putting your first level into the Rogue, and this is going to give you access to sneak attacks, and you'll make use of both of these. Not only will you make use of sneak attack range, but sneak attack melee as well, because you're actually very reliable with your melee weapons, provided you're using 2 finesse weapons. You'd be surprised at how capable this character is at close quarters or range. For abilities, you can get some additional skill proficiencies here. I'd recommend taking acrobatics because you want to make sure that your character stays on its feet, especially if you're at higher ground. You don't want to get knocked off and fall to your death or anything of that. Take additional points into stealth. This is going to be a mechanic that we make use of over and over. And in this particular party, I need some more investigation, so I'm taking advantage of the slot here. At level 7, we'll put our second level into Rogue. This will give us Cunning Action Hide. Now, we already have this from the Ranger tree. However, we'll also get Cunning Action Dash and Cunning Action Disengage. Both of these are nice. Misty Step is a little bit preferable, but if you want to take advantage of saving your spell slot, you can use Disengage, move away, then fire your ranged attack. And Cunning Action Dash is nice because if we're using a longbow, for example, that's using our regular action. Now, we have a bonus action to spare, meaning we can dash, put ourselves into a favorable spot, fire our bow, hopefully not get hit by the enemy if they're melee on the following turn. So it just increases your survivability overall, and you can make frequent use of that to move around the battlefield. Level 8, we'll put a third level into the Rogue class, and then we'll get to choose our subclass, which is the Assassin. We'll get Assassinate Initiative. This is going to allow us to have advantage on all of our attack rolls against creatures that haven't taken a turn yet. Keep in mind that we have boost to initiative as well, so we're going to be making use of this almost at the start of every single combat. Assassinate Ambush. Any successful attack rolls against a surprise creature is a critical hit. If we stealth into combat, we can take frequent advantage of this as well, making this character perfect for picking off targets before the fight begins. Assassin's Alacrity. Quick as an alley cat in Rain Dark City, you immediately restore your action and bonus action at the start of combat. Again, just some more synergy here. You can initiate the combat with huge hits and regain those actions and immediately do it again when the combat starts. At level 9, I would put a fourth level into Rogue, and this is just to get access to a feat sooner, and I would select Sharpshooter. You can get a -5 penalty to your attack roll, but you should have an incredibly high chance to hit, and a lot of your attacks will also have advantage, meaning that you get to roll the dice twice when making that attack. This comes with the benefit of dealing an additional 10 damage, and it can be toggled on and off. This also works with hand crossbows if you're dual wielding, so keep that in mind. This is still very strong. At level 10, I would recommend putting your first level into Bard, and this will allow us to select some cantrips, spells, starting instrument, and abilities. Now, we're certainly not going into this for the level 1 features, although there are some that are useful. Cantrips here, you're probably going to have all of these covered at this point. For this particular guide, I selected Mage Hand and Blade Ward. Blade Ward is going to at least buff yourself to take reduced damage. Cost an action, so the only reason you would actually ever use this would either be to pre-buff it on yourself before the start of combat, or if you just are unable to hit a target for whatever reason, line of sight issues, and so forth. For spells, again, you're going to have a lot of this covered at this point. However, I take Healing Ward. This is a nice way to pick party members up from an 18-meter range. Certainly doesn't hurt to have this. Thunder Wave is a way of just knocking things back. You do have Disengage, but if you're fully trapped, this could see some situational use. Surprisingly, I didn't have Speak with Animals covered, even this late in the game, so this was a nice pickup. And Fairy Fire is nice because you need the creatures to be visible in order to hit them. Also, attack rolls against them have advantage, and we know what happens with this character when it has advantage at this point. Starting instruments will make no influence whatsoever. You can choose whichever one is your favorite. For ability in the skill proficiencies, there really is nothing to complement the build. In fact, none of them have previous points if you've been following this guide, so you can elect something that you might be neglecting so far in the playthrough. On top of this, you'll also gain Bardic Inspiration, which will inspire an ally to gain an additional 1d6 to their next attack roll, ability check, or saving throw. I find this incredibly useful outside of combat, but it certainly can be used in combat for that bonus to your attack roll as well. Level 2, we'll put a second level into Bard. This will give us access to Song of Rest. You and your allies are revitalized as though you would have taken a short rest. Really nice for just allowing you to continue playing and not having to go back to camp and do a long rest. This is a character that really isn't very reliant on its spell slots, so if you're playing with other characters like that in your party, you can make use of the Song of Rest just to kind of heal your party members up and keep going, as opposed to needing to recoup all of your spell slots. And there are some classes that recover spell slots from short rest as well, so keep that in mind, that those would synergize well with this type of character, say a druid for the wild shape charges or a warlock for their spell slots. First spell here, I like to take Heroism, and take note that this does require concentration, meaning that you won't be able to use it with some of the other spells that we've acquired. I find the best use of this is pre-casting or pre-buffing, so you cast this on yourself, sneak around, and then open, and you'll have some temporary hit points, and as they kind of find you and start targeting you themselves, you'll recoup 5 temporary hit points per turn as well. It just gives you a little bit of a buffer, but in general, this character has very high survivability because of its incredible range. At level 12, we'll put a third level into the Bard class. This will give us access to a spell. I would recommend Invisibility. This will allow you to have advantage on your attacks, again requiring concentration, so you can make use of this and have advantage if that's more favorable than something like Hunter's Mark. For the subclass here, we're going to select College of Swords, and this is the main reason why we went into the Bard in general. And these are all have melee and ranged versions. One allows you to increase your armor class by 4 if you hit. This will probably be the least used. It is nice because we have a relatively low armor class for this character, especially if you're using it on Tactician, but overall it will be the least used in most playthroughs. Mobile Flourish, this allows you to push a target back 6 meters. Handy if you want to knock something off, make it take additional damage. You can also teleport to the target afterwards. Does see some situational use, not super handy with this particular build, but there's some really fun and exciting builds that can take advantage of that teleport. Slashing Flourish, attack up to 2 enemies at once, and this is the big reason why we took this subclass and went to level 3, which just gives us an additional attack every time we use this. For our fighting style here, we'll take 2-weapon fighting. This has been covered in the beginning of the guide, but you remember you'll be able to add your ability modifier to the damage of the attack with your offhand weapon, whether you're using melee weapons or dual wielding hand crossbows. So overall, this is really nice if you're in a situation where you're going to use melee weapons, even if you've got a longbow equipped, so you'll see some benefit from this. Now, I'd like to share some of the equipment that I'm using for this character, and it's not intended to be the best options of everything available. It's more intended to give you ideas of what may work well with this character, and you're free to customize your character for anything that works for you. In the helm slot, I use Mask of Soul Perception, +2 bonus to attack rolls, initiative rolls, and perception checks. Now, +2 bonus to attack rolls on a character that already has an incredibly high chance to hit is just a really good way of offsetting that Sharpshooter penalty, and the bonus to initiative rolls allows us to synergize with some of the talents that we have, allowing us to deal more damage. I'm using Cloak of Protection for the +1 armor class. The +1 saving throw is nice as well, but this character has a low armor class. Now, this character has 18, and this should actually be 20. However, in this particular playthrough, the Mirror of Lost stats are on Strength rather than Dex, and I did not use the Hair of the Hag, so we just have to pretend that this Dexterity is in fact 22, which is more than accessible given the methods I've mentioned. Spider Silk Armor. This is going to give you +1 bonus to stealth checks. Staying in stealth, allowing you to get that opener, is absolutely huge for this character. This is a really nice piece of armor that you can get really early on and use for the entirety of your playthrough. Gloves of Archery. Now, we're already proficient with longbows and shortbows on this particular character. However, our ranged attacks now deal an additional 2 damage, and this is actually even better if we're dual wielding hand crossbows, because those benefit from it as well, even though you don't get the proficiency for them. Swearsy Shoes. Jump distance increased by 1.5 meters. There's definitely better boot options. However, my party members are all geared out in this particular playthrough. Having the ability to use jump, which is a bonus action, to get my character to a more favorable position is nice. So this is the reason that I have these pair of boots equipped, and I didn't want to just steal gear from other characters, because I think it's important to show everything that the party has to offer, right? It's not just about one character stacking all the single best pieces of equipment and neglecting every other character in your party. So this is what was available, and it works just fine for this character. So sometimes a simple item is just fine. I've got a pair of legendary weapons. These are very strong finesse weapons, but any 2 finesse weapons will do. And what these weapons themselves do is pretty overpowered in general, but like I said, just find your best 2 finesse weapons. This character is more than capable of melee. The Amulet of Ball. On a hit, inflict bleeding upon targets that have maximum hit points. This is a really nice choice for this character. You're often the first character to act, or if you're sneaking around, you're definitely going to be the first character to act. So you can often hit targets with maximum hit points, and there's no limit to this. You can basically just attack targets that are at full health and start this bleeding on everything and let the damage over time just add up. Additionally, Caustic Band. Your weapon attacks deal 2 acid damage. This does work for ranged weapons, and again, it works for hand crossbows as well. Shifting Corpus Ring. This allows us to use invisibility as a spell, just another way for us to get back into invisibility or stealth again. Using Gunter Mail. This is a weapon that you get in Act 3, so you can certainly use any other ranged weapon, and like I said, this works for all ranged weapons. You can use whatever you like here. This is the strongest longbow, in my opinion. Gives you access to Celestial Haste. Not that this build even needs it. It's very, very strong, but when you want it, you have that option to use as your opener as well. Regardless of how you choose to build your archer or sniper-like character, they're all pretty strong builds in this game. As always, thanks for taking the time to watch, and have a great day.